Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Painted in Color podcast. I'm co-host Lauren Brown, joined by co-host Mia Araujo and Eric Wilkerson, and special guest Shawn Elizabeth Russell. We are going to be recapping the amazing Gen Con, the illustrious Dragon Con, and our experiences all at these conventions. Mia, Eric, and Shawn and I went to Gen Con this year, meeting each other for the first time in person ever. All three of us in person. I knew Mia in person before, but Eric, I think neither of us had ever met Eric in person before.
Yeah.
And then at Dragon Con, it was me and Shawn who attended, which was really awesome. And you
Mm.
stayed at my house, which was really
Yeah, it was
nice.
awesome.
So as we get into it, Shawn, how are you? Thanks for joining us.
Oh, thanks for having me. I'm really good. Things have been, it's been a busy year. More shows than I've ever done this year. But I'm kind of at the tail end where it's just one a month now. So it's been really nice to kind of just chill a little bit
Just
and
just
get
one
back
month.
into drawing. Yeah, just one a
Yeah.
month now.
Just one.
Just one a month.
Well,
Yeah,
it
no big
sounds
deal.
crazy to me. Wait, so what all did you do this year? If you could run down for
Let
us.
me see. I did OhioCon and which was in Ohio, obviously. It was an anime show. I did AmKey, Anime Milwaukee, Emerald City Comic Con, Indiana Comic Con, Sakura Con, Anime Central, Fan Expo Denver, Gen Con, San Diego Comic Con. Um, I think that was it, maybe.
And Dragon Con, right?
In Dragon
And
Con.
Dragon Con, yeah. Yeah, I thought maybe I forgot something. I was looking at a list, but then I realized it was the one that was like apply for next year. So
Oh, I see.
yeah, it
That's a lot of shows, Sean. That's
was a
great.
lot. Yeah, the month of February to March, I had 4 shows in 5 weeks,
Oh my God.
which was don't do it. Don't do it. I mean, it was great
Never.
financially,
Sure.
Yeah.
um, but don't do it.
How do you like I would never. How do you
That's good.
like what does that feel like?
A blur and
Yeah.
just adrenaline, I guess.
Mm.
Yeah, because I want to say exhaustion. I think I was sick at one of the shows because I was just so tired, I think. Um, but yeah, kind of just adrenaline because I wanted to rest, obviously, but just having to like, okay, I gotta get ready for this next one right when I get back. It pushed me through, I guess. Like, I don't know, the fear of losing the income, I guess. This when I accepted all those shows, it was like AI was kind of
Yeah.
blowing up.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
so I was like, oh, well, all the artists are getting laid off from film and gaming. So competition for conventions is going to be crazy. So I better take everything I can get while I have the chance.
Mm.
Because I was anticipating all the other shows in the back end of the year to be like, no, thanks, we don't need you. Um, so that's why I accepted all of them.
Yeah.
Because I was afraid. But yeah, I don't think I'll do it again. It
Yeah.
was a lot.
I'm also like wondering, have you noticed any change at all in terms of when you apply and how, like with the shifting landscape of people getting laid off
Mm,
with AI and everything? Because you do way more shows than I do. I only do like 4 a year. Um,
that's
yeah,
nice.
have you noticed anything different?
Um, I don't know if I've noticed anything personally. Um, I feel like there is a trend of like not getting into as many shows. Like this
Mhm.
year, I was waitlisted for MomoCon and some other show that I can't remember off the top of my head, but and I had been to MomoCon last year, so I was like, maybe I'll get in. But I feel like more shows are kind of rotating. That's kind of what
Yeah.
I've been hearing from other people who do a lot of shows as well. Um, and I think there's been a trend in like a decrease in sales, like from a broader group of people that I've talked with. Um, though thankfully I haven't seen a decrease myself, but I think it's because I'm kind of ramping like my selection or like my merchandise or whatever is like getting better this
Yeah.
year than it was previously. And the first year, I just have more stuff to offer, and people actually are familiar now, whereas before I was kind of like super, nobody knew I existed before. Yeah.
They sure do know you're around now, which is
Yeah.
awesome to say because your work is amazing. And I'm glad that you're
Oh,
getting more recognition. Yeah.
thank you.
And then we saw each other at Gen Con, which was
Yeah,
amazing.
it was awesome. We were right across each other, because there
No,
was
we did
always
not.
hundreds of people
It's
walking
so
through the
real.
whole time.
We would see each other blur by as we're like, hey, okay,
I'd see you when
bye.
you ran to the bathroom. I'd be
Yeah,
like,
that was
bye,
it.
Lauren, bye.
Yeah, it was just like, bye, shall stop by later. And like you stop by for like a split second and you're like, oh, you have people, I'm gonna run away again, which was always good because I
Mhm.
think every time I went by your table, you looked like you were always busy, which was really
Same
cool.
with yours. Yeah.
Yeah, so it was just like, woo.
Yeah.
And
Mhm.
so, and yeah, and also the cool thing about this year too was the fact that the organizers put me, Mia, and Eric all next to each other in a row. So
Mhm.
it was Eric next to me, and then Mia, you were on the end cap
Mhm.
there. So Mia, well, like you, it's been a while since you've been back to Gen Con. I think was this in 2019.
Yeah, yeah, 5 years.
Yeah. So what was that like for you coming back after such a long time? Like not such a long time, but after that while.
It is a long time because it's honestly I'd only been doing shows for 2 years, so I think that it felt like at the time I was kind of ramping up, and like I think 2017 I only did 2 shows and they were only local to me. 2018 I added I think one more show where I traveled, and then the fourth year I think I added two more, something like that.
Mm-hmm.
And so I was like adding 1 or 2 shows and was just flying out for the first time. But Gen Con I had done in 2018 and 2019 and then stopped for 5 years. And so in
Yeah.
a way, I feel like that did sort of kill my momentum, if that makes sense. Because what I don't remember if we were saying this off camera before, but just in case I'll repeat it. Like Shawn, you were kind of saying like the first year no one knows who you are, and so you are kind of battling
Mhm.
upstream a bit, and then the second year there's no
Mhm.
people who remember you, and the third year you're just building momentum the more years in a row you go. But what I
Yeah.
didn't
Mhm.
realize this time, I was like, oh, I've been there twice, so I'm not new, and like people will remember me from 5 years later, and that did happen, but it was also at the same time like starting over, if that makes sense. So it's like it felt like the only people who stopped were people who already knew who I was, either online or had seen me in JetCon. But it did feel a little bit like starting all over again. So I think in
Mhm.
retrospect, if I had known that, I would have planned things a little differently in terms of what I brought or what my expectations were. But yeah, I think that that would just be my advice to anybody who's taking a long break from shows, to not just act like you're going to be building off the momentum from before, because that might happen, but just
Mhm.
kind of play it safe a little bit and be like, let's pretend like we're just starting over here just in case, especially if you can't afford to do shows, because that's the problem too. I am kind of in a similar financial position as when I started, which is I'm really tight for cash right now. So it's like doing any show is a huge risk for me. Whereas
Yeah.
for someone else, they might break even or lose money and it doesn't really affect their lifestyle day to day. But
Mhm.
if you're in that position, you're just kind of starting shows, you can just kind of barely afford to do them. You do have to plan things differently than other people.
Mhm.
But yeah, without going too much into my thing, I think the other thing that I did that maybe in retrospect I wouldn't have done when I was more concentrating on shows is that back then, again, I was building a body of work to kind of have a table that's all very consistent in terms of the story that it's telling. And this time, it was the first time since the beginning where my table was kind of split in terms of my book art,
Mhm.
because I couldn't
Mm.
share any new art. That's the problem. I could only share the cover and
Yeah.
then all the old art. So it's like people had seen that stuff already. And then the other half of the table was the new work that I had done since then, which is freelance for other people or like personal work. So again, you're splitting your story in half a bit, and you have a smaller
Mm.
table, and you've been gone for 5 years. It's like it makes the story a lot. It doesn't have that sort of snap communication that you need, if that makes sense, like in a huge show like that where everyone's
Mhm.
so visually stimulated and they need an instant read. But
Yeah.
yeah, I've obviously
Mhm.
been analyzing this a lot the last couple of months, but it's I think even when shows don't go as well as I'd hoped, I learn a lot from them, and I think that's the best you can take away from
Mhm.
it. But yeah, I think that obviously like I said in the beginning, if shows aren't something that you can easily afford, you do have to be more careful with your decisions and stuff like that.
Mhm.
So
And so is that what you would have done differently to have like more of like a narrative, or like not splitting that setup a little bit? Like, how would you have done, like, what would that have looked like if you had done it knowing what you know now?
You know, the funny thing is too, when I signed up for the show, I was like, I'm gonna be done with my book in April. So Gen Con at the end of July, piece of cake. And I did not know that my deadline was basically gonna turn out to be the week of Gen Con because that's how long
Right.
it was delayed. So
Yeah,
it
because you were
just,
painting in your hotel room.
yeah, I was. And then I
Oh
just,
my
yeah, it was
gosh.
insane. It was, that alone was like, why did I do this to myself? So I think if I had, with the information I have now, I just would not have done the show this year. I would have done it next
Yeah.
year. Because that's the other thing too. I was like, oh, it'll be kind of like I'll sort of advertise my book as a pre-order, but I didn't have the physical book there because again, our publisher was kind of delayed on printing the advanced copies they thought they'd have in hand for me. So a lot of things like that I
Mm.
thought would I'd have there in time or I'd have more time to prep and make new work. This didn't happen. So lessons learned there. But everyone was picking up the amazing prop my sister made of the book and trying to flip through it. And it was like
Oh,
fused
and you
together.
can't flip through it.
It's really
So
funny.
sad.
She did such a great job, and everyone it was kind of a great break the ice sort of thing too, where they were like, "Oh, this is so cool." But I feel like if the book was actually there, that would have helped too, you know. So yeah,
Hmm.
I think that in retrospect, I would just be like, instead of trying to advertise something that isn't out yet, I just wait until the thing is out. It's just easier communication, you know.
Hmm.
You have less talking to
Yeah.
do with the things there, you know. Um,
Hmm.
and yeah, I guess I just would have, if I don't have enough new work to have a cohesive story at my table, just wouldn't do the show. I think that's my takeaway, you know, because
Yeah.
it's just too big a risk unless it's local and I don't have to travel. But for a big one like that, yeah, that's probably what I would have done.
Yeah, Gen Con is a lot, and I understand. Like it's difficult because with some time away, it was interesting to see like what kind of audience, like how the audience shifted and changed depending on what year it was. Because like I kind of almost naturally exclude the year between COVID, like the COVID
Yeah.
years,
Hmm.
basically just because it's like they feel like they don't exist. But they do. And it's like it creates more distance in time, but it's like it's forever and like a blip of time all in one go. And so I'm like, oh yeah, like I guess 5 years is a long time because the COVID years were in between it, which distorted everybody's time. And so like everybody has to become reacquainted with your work and your table. And I was worried about that too because I skipped 2021 because it was way too soon for me. And went back on 2022 and hoped that people would still know who I am. So it's definitely like a little scary to distance yourself and then come back. But it's also hard to like have work that you can't share yet. And you've done so much work.
Yeah.
And you don't even have like the copy of the thing that you've been working so hard for yet. But next year you will.
Yeah.
And and hopefully, hopefully we're there next. Oh, I mean, will you do it next year?
Uh, it depends. I feel like the other thing too is like I don't have any game art, and it was actually it felt I was gonna ask the three of you because Sean and I don't know, have you done
Mm.
game art as of now?
No, none at all.
Okay.
Yeah.
I don't really sell game
Um,
art.
Yeah. But
yeah.
I guess I just really felt like this year maybe it felt more like people had maybe this is just my personal experience. Like people had spent their money either on games or artists they already knew, and then anything else that didn't fall into either of those things was an expense they weren't going to make. And also, I felt like in past years at Gen Con,
Mm.
people were buying the big prints more, and now they were all asking for little cards or little postcards or prints, small prints. And
Hmm.
I'm like, I don't have any of
Mm.
that, so they would just. I mean, I did have a set, but it's like if it wasn't the image they want, they would just move on. Whereas in the past, it felt like they were more trigger happy for originals and things like that. I felt like
Yeah.
Gen Con used to be the
Hmm.
show that people consistently just buy originals. And maybe that happened for other people, but it just didn't happen for me this year. But because
Yeah.
of those things, I feel like I'll probably start over again, if that makes sense. So I'll start here at WonderCon locally to me next year and do some
Mhm.
local events or do whatever my publisher wants me to do in terms of advertising. And then in terms of flying out to shows, I'll wait another year and just kind of raise money again. You know what I mean? Start building up my savings to afford to do that more comfortably.
Yeah,
Um,
ease yourself back into the scene. But you're also in California where there's a lot of shows too. So it's a pretty big spread of the things that you could attend without having to pay for travel costs.
yeah,
But the application
Hmm.
costs are also expensive. Like the table costs are nothing to sneeze at. So it
yeah,
is a lot.
Hmm.
it is a lot.
Yeah.
The hotels add up though quite a bit.
Oh,
So
yes, they do.
Hmm.
last thing I want to say before, because I'm talking a lot, I know, but it's like one thing that came to mind too is we're talking a lot about you're very insular about making your art and like you have a body of work and that sort of thing, but it is such a
Mhm.
different thing when you put it out there and no one knows what it is, you know, it's like you know what I mean? It's
Hmm.
like if you're not a
Hmm.
recognizable artist yourself, that your work is something that people already recognize, that's a thing against you, or you don't have an IP that people recognize, or magic, for instance, like something that's recognizable there you do have to realize that your work is almost like a slower read, you know, or like a second read, if that makes
Hmm.
sense.
Yeah.
And I think I found that with Comic Cons, especially, that it's like that snap judgment, it comes into play. But even at shows like Gen Con and Dragon Con, I think where artists are really admired, I think that because there's so much competition, as you're saying, there's more and more great artists every year.
Yeah.
That does, I think that's what I take into consideration when you're planning your table is like, if your name and the IPs you've worked on or the IPs you're drawing are not recognizable, then your work itself has to communicate, like the story it tells has to communicate like this. And
Yeah.
I notice that's not a strength in my work. My work is definitely more contemplative in the sense that it's definitely a second read in terms of it's about something that I don't know. It's just a self-observation. But if your work is kind of like that, it's just something to keep in mind about shows that a big busy show like that, people don't really take their time to kind of sit with the work. Maybe they do, but I just think most people don't.
Yeah, it's taken a lot of time to understand that very concept as like I had been doing conventions because I had noticed when I first started doing cons that my prints weren't selling that well. And it wasn't until a friend had told me, she was like, you have to really think about the kind of person who would want to put this on their wall and why they want to put this art on their wall. You know, what is it telling them? What is it telling other people about them that they have this work on their wall? And the faster that read is, the faster you communicate that information to let somebody know that that thing is like something that they should have in their wall because it says XYZ about them. And it wasn't until that, it's like, it really clicked for me. And I was like, oh, because before what I was doing was art that like any original art, no one could really make a connection to it. And I'm not saying that that's the thing about your art at all. But it was just like, you know, sometimes I could just my own original characters or some story that no one had any context into. And it was really difficult to kind of like get people to like resonate with it because they didn't really know where it was coming from. Like, unless it was fan art, people weren't really buying it. And I didn't want to keep making fan art because I didn't enjoy it. And it clicked, especially when I started doing the avant-garde series, because it's very simple concept. It's just a queen decorated and plants like fashion and like different plants is the series. And so it's a really easy, like, you know, quick read. And if people ask me questions, I can tell them more about it and like more of the story to kind of get them hooked. And it's like, oh, like if you like these kinds of things, this is your queen. And that's when they would be like, oh, like I do like this. I do like strong boundaries, or I do like whimsy. And so like that kind of really helped a lot with the marketability of the prints that I had done. But it took a long time to figure that out. And it's also, you have to like make your personal work still with the intent to cater to the audience. So it's not like selling out in any way, but it's also like considering the other angle as you're making personal work, which is like some people do not want to do, and I respect that they don't want to do it. But it's like it's a hard thing to consider when you're making art, like, you know, it's for yourself, but it's like, damn, like I have to also like figure out what kind of things my audience might want to. It's a really, really weird balancing act. And outside of that series, like I'm still trying to figure it out for myself because it's hard. It's real hard.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's hard to make things cohesive in a way that people who are not inside your brain can connect with it. But it's good to think about how to build the bridge between you and your audience or your potential audience.
Yeah. Sure. And it's weird for me too, Mia, because I didn't have that issue with your art when I first met you and when I first saw your table. I was like, Black mermaids, let's go. Like, it wasn't very hard for me. But like, because like, you know, I love that portrait, like the colors, like the face, like the expressions, like the way that you paint. I don't know, it really resonates with me. So yeah, like
I felt the same way too.
Oh,
yeah.
thanks. I mean, a lot of people were saying,
your book before. Sorry. I knew, I'm sorry. I bought your book at like your last Gen Con way back when, before we were like friends.
So thank you. I remember meeting you at that show. It was so cool.
I still have your memory, friend.
So sorry, I interrupted you, Lauren. Go ahead.
No, that was it. That was all. But
I was gonna say that the funny thing is people passing by would be like, wow, so pretty. And I was thinking aesthetics alone is not enough at these shows, you know. It's like they might like how it looks, you know. And so it's like I think that's something that might be frustrating too for people who are new to shows, that it's like people responding well, they like it, but they're not gonna buy it. What's that divide? You know what I mean? What is it what's gonna get them to buy it? And anyway, I would love to know your experience with this, Eric, as
me too.
You know, because I'm so dying to know how it went for you with that.
You were next to me. You had like 20-minute conversations with a lot of people. It was great.
Me?
Yeah, you. I saw it.
So I'm always the guy telling like long-winded stories. But so Gen Con was my first convention, fresh out of college. And I was
What
telling
year
that
was
story a
that?
lot over the week, over that throughout this throughout Gen Con. Um, when I went, it was based in Milwaukee, and it was the first time I had been on a plane since it was probably the second time in my life I'd been on a plane. And it was like a big deal to go to Gen Con. I was fresh out. Donato had told me to go because he was going to be there and he was going to be the guest of honor. And so me and a couple of students from our sci-fi class all went um, to support him and to watch his booth and all that stuff. But we all put our stuff in the art show. But the art show was sectioned off from the rest of the convention behind closed doors. So if you didn't know that the show was there, it was like the most poorly attended art show
Oh
I'd
no.
seen since like Spectrum Live.
Mm.
And um they had to basically tell people like, hey, there's art in here, right? But
No.
it was so dead that artists would have rubber band fights. It was like boring. Like they had nothing to do. There was no traffic.
Oh.
And
But
you
I
have
didn't know. I
tables?
just thought that that's how it was. That's how I
What were you
thought it was
saying again?
supposed to be. Huh?
Oh no, I
Maybe.
said the tables, like you had the panels and everything like it was there.
So it was set up more like old like how Dragon Con used to be, where there was the pegboard walls,
Yeah.
gallery, like in the center of the room, and then there were
Mm.
the artist guests, the featured guests had tables. Otherwise, you just paid for panels, like a panel wall, and that
Oh.
was it. So you basically put your art up on the wall, put a price on it, and you could just walk the convention and do whatever
Oh wow.
and hope that somebody bought your stuff.
Wow.
Wow.
So that was we're going back to, you know, June of 2000. So they've had a lot of time to evolve this show. But I just remember being there and looking at Milwaukee, looking at the crowds, looking at the people around me and who was buying and everything. And I didn't see anybody there that looked like me. It was me and the custodians.
Mm.
And there would always be somebody like dumping trash going, you painted this? I'm like, yeah, for real? I'm like, like, yeah, that was me. I did that. Like, what are you doing here? Like, that was always the question they would ask me, like, why are you here?
Oh
So I'm
no.
like, I don't even know. God, you're like, now you put that seed in my head. I don't even know. And I didn't go back until
Oh
like two
no.
months. So um I saw like the success you guys were having. I saw the success a lot of other artists were having at this and saw that the convention was completely different
Yeah.
from what I had first uh, uh, been to and decided to give it another shot. But similar issue that you guys have had in the past, or Mia, that you had, where you put your own stuff out there, you put your personal work out there, and people gravitated toward it, but they weren't going to buy it.
Mhm.
They're like, oh,
Mhm.
that's nice, that's cute, or oh wow, look at the eyes on this one. Oh wow, that's so oh wow. But very few people pull the trigger and are like, ah, that's mine. Here's the card. I don't care how much it is. Just here, take my money. That happened very few times throughout Gen Con. I came away from this experience realizing if I wasn't doing magic cards, I probably would have walked out of that convention with like $500.
Mm.
Like I
Wow.
Afrofuturism is not the body of work for the Gen Con audience.
Mm.
I know that the audience for that is at Dragon Con. I know
Yeah.
that it is at other conventions, around the East Coast, but I had people look at my table and they're like, okay, what is this? What is this? Oh, hey, Magic card. And they're like, okay, all right, I see. I see. Oh, this is just this is gonna be rough. If I didn't have a binder full of stuff, it would have been rough.
Mhm.
Yeah.
And it would have been really bad, like coming home saying, well, like nobody bought anything. For like be gone from home for a week and have my kids missing me and everything, and then not sell anything. That would have
Mm.
that would have been one and done. Like, nope. I couldn't have even have asked, like bribed my way and like, please let me go back. Nope, it wouldn't have happened.
Yeah.
But
It's very real, that it's like what it
Yeah.
feels like you have one shot, that
yeah,
sucks. So I'm
yeah.
so glad it didn't go that way for you and you killed it.
Mhm.
Right. Yeah. And it was a good experience. And well, like I told you before the show started, I ended up blowing off like a good chunk of it on on my dog. But
Oh.
it is what it is. But um I had an assistant because I didn't know what to expect.
Mhm.
And um it was a local one of my wife's coworkers' son. He's like really into magic cards and he was super helpful. But I realized maybe 3 hours into the first day, I wasn't going to have anything for him to do.
Mm.
I wasn't selling a ton of prints. I wasn't moving a bunch of originals. People just wanted autographs. And he's like, "You need me for anything?" And I'm like, I did not know what to expect. I'm like, "I'm sorry, man. Like, you got a free pass to Gen Con. Like,
Just go explore it.
run them streets. Yeah, like, and enjoy it." But yeah, I didn't know about like little logistic things like where to park to unload, and
Mhm.
I was just walking from one side of the convention building to another just to
Oh no.
grab a box. It was rough,
It was so
but
hot too. Oh my God.
It was so hot. Oh, why
yeah,
was it so hot?
It was hotter in the building than it was outside.
Yeah, it
Yo,
really
yeah,
was.
that first setup day is no joke.
I
I
know
like,
I know why they don't put on the AC, but God, why don't they put on the AC? It's like the sweatiest
no.
day ever. Like it's just God.
Oh, it was awful. Like I remember getting there and I got there late on Wednesday because there was traffic on the way up because we just drove up the 9 hour road trip. And because there was traffic, I got there at like I think 6 and it was going to close at 7. And even within that hour of setting up, I like almost passed out because like I didn't have enough water and I was sweating profusely and I was hungry. So like I was just like literally on my last legs. I'm like, oh God, I'm not gonna make it.
Oh
It was
no.
bad. It was real bad.
It's really bad.
Yeah.
what I like about conventions is even if you don't have help, there's the neighbor to the left of you or across from you. There's always somebody's husband or spouse that's willing to go, "Hey, I'm gonna go grab some food. You want anything?" And you're like, "Oh, thank God. Oh, thank
Mhm.
goodness."
Yes.
Can you watch my table while I go to the bathroom? And like, yeah, it becomes this little 4-day family,
Mhm.
Yes.
you know?
Mhm.
So I'm not gonna worry too much about trying to scramble to find an assistant anymore. Um, because that's how it was at Dragon Con, but where people even took sales for me. They like I went away from my table for one reason or another, and we had poor cell service. So Erica, I can't remember her
Erica
name.
Williams?
Huh?
Is it Erica Williams?
No, it
Or
was
Erica Taguchi?
yeah, her.
Erica
We
Taguchi.
were we were
Mm.
we were neighbors, and she was seeing that I was getting restless, and I walked away from a table, and she couldn't call me. So she just did the transaction for me and just left the money on
Oh,
my table
That's amazing.
oh,
and
that's
even
so
wrote the
Oh,
sweet.
receipt and everything. And she's like, "Oh yeah."
Wow.
I was like, "Oh
so
my God,
nice.
that was beautiful. Thank you so much."
She's a sweetheart.
Um, but yeah, these conventions they can be fun or they can be a 4-day exercise in misery. Like it's either it's or there is no, I feel like there's no in between.
Yeah.
You're either going to come there all energetic about like, yeah, people are going to want this, people are going to buy this, and then 2 days in going, oh my God, this is the worst mistake of my life.
Oh no.
Oh.
And that happened to me at New York Comic Con, and I
Yeah.
sat I sat in between two magic card artists that were just killing it. And I'm just sitting here like, oh my gosh, I don't want to come back. If I don't show up tomorrow, what are they gonna do? Right?
Oh,
Like
that
if
was
I just packed up and left.
in your pre-magic days. Yeah.
Pre-magic days. This is like 2015. I
Mm.
was miserable. 2014, I was miserable.
Oh,
But I even had people, we were at the very end of this long hangar bay
I remember that.
at New York Comic
Mm.
Con, and people legit walked past several people that worked for Marvel Comics to come to me and ask me if I had Spider-Man prints. I'm like, no, like you just passed by like
all of them.
you walked past like, like J. Scott Campbell, like all these people that have touched the character in their life. Banner, it's on their banner. It's legit on their banner. You
That's
walked
so
all the way
funny.
past them. We're like, yo, you got any Spider-Man prints?
It was
Oh
like,
God.
do
Do you
they're
not
right
see?
there.
But I feel like it's just some random person that was there for somebody else that couldn't make it, or they're not into it. They don't know who the artists are. They don't care.
Yeah.
They were just told in a text, pick up Spider-Man prints. Okay. But
Yeah. That's
yeah.
honestly how I'm starting to
So
feel.
there's always, I was like, I talked to my friend Alan and about these conventions, and he was like, yeah, you spent all this money on this booth and all that. And for that first couple hours, there's this nervous, anxious, nauseous feeling, and you're like, I can't believe I spent so much money and nobody's bought a thing. You're like, oh God. And then people start buying, and you're like, okay, phew.
Yeah, you like start to ease a little bit, and you're like,
It starts
okay,
to ease.
this is
That
not.
is the amazing thing where it goes from like 20, 20, 20, and then by the end of the day, it's like several hundred or $1,000. But it's like that trickle that in the beginning of just like little tiny transactions, you're like, how are we going to end up here? You know what I mean? Like that is always kind of,
and
it feels kind of mysterious, you know?
That
It
first
is.
2 to 3, maybe 3 hours, or you're just stuck in your head looking around going, oh
Yeah,
my
yeah.
God.
Yeah.
But
So funny.
yeah, so Gen Con was good. It was good to be back and doing this. But I think since this is my first time coming to, I guess in my brain, the modern version of this.
Definitely the modern version
Oh,
of Gen Con.
huh?
Definitely the modern version of Gen Con.
Yeah, that I'm gonna have to do it a couple more times before people go, oh, hey, you're back.
Yeah.
And you brought that Afro stuff with you.
Nobody was weird at you, actually, were they? Please. Okay, good.
No, I had, and everybody was either very cool, very polite, or they just didn't say anything.
Yeah.
Yeah.
They just kept it moving, and I appreciated that, because they could have been like, "What is this shit?" Like, could have been really overt about it, but nobody was rude. Um, I had people come up to me and be like, "Oh yeah, I totally love what you do." I'm like, "Well, then buy it." Well,
Don't tell me
that.
I mean, do
pinch
tell
my
me.
cheeks.
It's nice to have the interaction that people like your art, but it's just like support it with your money.
Yeah.
Just I'm not here for compliments.
Yeah, because I was like, thank you so much.
It's like, thank you for saving me money.
I have to say, we're talking a lot about money, but the people do make up for the show. And I just wanted to make that really clear. Like, I had the best time with my sister. It was the first time my sister Barbara came with me to a show that we flew out together. And it was so amazing in every way. Like, just getting to spend a lot of time with her. And she was freaking, like, I could not have done the show without her. I just have to say that. She worked so hard and helped me out. But even just seeing all of you, getting to have dinner all together, like, I live for those moments, you know? And it's like, I know it's like shows can be hard financially, but it's like, to me, I'm like, that's a memory I'm going to have for the rest of my life, is being at that show. And all the people that did come back and remembered me from 5 years ago, I was like, you remember this? Holy shit. Like, it was just, it's awesome. You know, it's like, it's the stuff that we all live for, doing this alone in our studios all day, you know? And I know we talk about that a lot, but it really does mean a lot to people who are listening and thinking, should I go to a show and support artists? Yes, you should.
Please do.
With the AI shit going around, it means a lot to see people still buying art and still being excited about it. So
yeah, like Gen Con is always for me an affirmation that people are still going to value human art, and they value the artists who are behind that table working their ass off to make this art real and to be able to share it with everybody. The audience is definitely like my absolute favorite in any convention that I've been to ever, because even if they're not buying stuff, they're always so grateful to just like see people like doing their art and sharing their work, and they just like they're so polite and so kind and warm. Like it's a very like nice audience. That's why I was like there's no way anybody was mean to Eric, because like Gen Con doesn't do that. And it's like of course they weren't, because like Gen Con is a genuinely, it's such a nice audience that I'm like I've only gotten just like kindness from people. It's always been a really special show. And then not only that, but the artists that are there too, just it's like a family reunion every single year, where I always have that nervous energy of I'm driving to the show and I'm like, what if this year no one buys anything? And I'm like, well, you know what? Even if they don't buy anything, I still get to see my friends.
Yeah.
I get to hang out with my friends and see them again.
Well, that's a major part of it, because the first time I did Gen Con, I met a number of artists that were also at the start of their careers, just coming out of art school.
Yeah.
And it was funny to catch up with them 24 years later and be like, we're still here.
Yeah.
Wow.
That's so
We're still
It's
doing
so
it.
cool.
We're succeeding, and you know, we're known for what we do. And the relationships that happen because of those conventions. I met one of the art directors from Wizards of the Coast before he was an art director, Zach Stella,
Oh, really?
at New
You
York
met
Comic
baby
Con. Like,
Zach Stella?
baby Zach Stella. Like, I was so miserable and bored at my table that I just got up and started wandering around. And I came to his table and I stopped cold. And I'm looking at his stuff. And I'm like, are these, like, how big are the originals? I'm looking at the prints. I'm like, how big are the originals? And he laughs and he goes, oh, no, these are all digital. I lost my mind. I'm just like, wait, what? But we stayed in contact. A number of artists that I've met, all of those relationships started from conventions and led to people saying, "Hey, I can't do this job right now because I'm too busy, but give it to Eric."
Hmm.
And that's why I try to tell my students, like, even if you don't sell a thing, the relationships that you make, the people you meet at these conventions can change your life.
Yeah.
So that's been huge. But oh, and
Absolutely.
the other thing was my students
Yeah.
flew out to meet me
They're so
at
They
Gen,
did.
which was the coolest thing. It felt like it was just coming full circle, because I came out to Donato and to meet him at this show, and all the other students from class, and to have like 7 people from I had a student come flew out all the way from Ireland.
wow.
Yeah.
Just
Oh my
like,
gosh.
they
This is
came
so cool.
Texas, California, Ireland, from all over the world
Awesome.
to not only see me, but to see this convention. And a couple of them walked away with contacts, people that couple of them walked away um and got contacted by companies like the very next day.
That's
So they got
awesome.
commissions out of it.
That's
And I'm thinking, well, there you go. I'm not
That's
just blowing
amazing.
smoke.
That's
Yeah.
amazing.
But
It
you
worked out.
invited some ADs from Magic at your table, right? To look at their portfolios. That is freaking
So
amazing.
That's the coolest thing.
Yeah.
yeah, that was so one of the art directors from Magic, Sarah, not Sarah,
Yeah.
Sam Padilla
Oh
came
yeah.
out, um, and we were talking, and she said something like, I'm a new art director, so nobody knows who I am, but I'm always up for giving portfolio reviews. And I said, oh, really? So I called my students and I'm like, what are you guys doing? And they were about to go get something to eat. And I said, stop everything and get over here. So they got a portfolio review, and then Zach just happened to drift by. So they got for
This
portfolio.
year?
Yeah.
You
I
didn't
just
tell me.
I just moved a chair out for I just stepped out from my booth and I just let that be portfolio review central.
It was so
And for the
My
last
coworkers
hour,
are right
hour and a
next
half
to
of the
me.
show, they got reviews from two art directors from Wizards.
That's wild. Wait,
And
when is I'm like my coworkers were right next to me and you didn't
you
tell me?
were you
cool. You're too busy,
you was too
Lauren,
busy. You was too
making all
busy.
that money. Yeah.
Yes, I
Yeah.
would have loved to say hi to them.
Oh.
Damn,
Oh.
But that
that's
was
so
fun.
cool.
And they were so grateful and so full of they were so excited, after the fact. They're like, I can't believe that happened. I'm like,
And
yeah,
they were really good too. Your
yeah,
students are fantastic artists.
yes, they are. Yes, they are. I drilled it into them. I told them, you're gonna remember the things I say to you for the next decade or so of your life. You're gonna hear me in your head when you
Yeah,
paint
just
stuff.
drilling in the instruction of just like
Yeah.
do this, don't do that. Yeah.
And because the same way I hear my teachers in my head to this day, I'm like, that's the sign of quality instruction.
There you go. Just like
But it was a good time, and I if I can get in again, I'll definitely do it. So
that's awesome. And Shawn, what was your experience at Gen Con this year? And like, 'cause like you said, like you'd had a building year. So you were like building, I mean, not a building year, but you had a busy year with everything, but you had new stuff and
Hmm.
like things that you prepared. So I'm curious, like
Yeah.
compared to last year's Gen Con, with all the preparations that you've done, what was the differences that you saw?
Um, Gen Con, actually, Gen Con last year wasn't super different because my new products at all, it was like the snake sweater. Um,
Yeah, wearing
that
your
was
merch.
the thing. It came out, I got them like right at Gen Con or right before last year. So I had them this year at Gen Con too. But it was prints that were popular last year and this year. Um, I think the biggest change this year, like I did very similar numbers to last year. I think it was $200 better this year than last year.
Wow.
But it was like my top show of all time,
Oh
both
yeah.
years. So
Yay.
I'm super happy with it.
Yeah.
Even like I know sometimes people set goals like I want to make like 2 or 3 thousand more this year than last year, but I'm super pleased with 200 better. Um, um, but I did sell more gold foil canvas prints this year than the previous year, which was really fun. And they all happened on the first day, which is
Wow.
wild to me because usually people wait until like the last minute or like the last
Hmm.
day that they're going to be there, especially when they're bigger items, but they all opted to ship. And I was like, yes, because I only have one of each thing. So I'll keep it on the wall and then send you a new one. Um, but yeah, and I started crying afterwards, which was really
Oh,
um but also I
happy
saw
tears.
somebody from yeah, happy tears.
Okay,
Yeah.
good.
Yeah. I did that last year too though.
Oh.
Um but that was when Jeff asked me to be part of the fantasy art workshop that Lauren is also doing next year as
Oh
the art
yeah, that's
director of
right.
honor.
I'm gonna be
Uh
an art director, guest of honor. I'm very
yeah.
excited about it. The fantasy art workshop next
Hmm.
year, or whatever. It's fun.
But yeah, yeah. So I cried about that last year when Jeff asked me, and then I couldn't tell anybody. So I'm like, I'm okay. It's good things, but it's a secret. And then this year I cried about the canvases, and also I saw kind of like my spiritual mom, kind of. So she was the children's pastor at the church that I was interning at. And she was like a mother figure, I guess is what you would say. That's probably a more readable term, but I hadn't seen her in like 7 years and she came.
Wow.
So I started crying immediately on her shoulder because that was right
Oh.
after like um, one of the canvas sales. So I was like, oh my gosh. So it was a great moment to everyone who witnessed it. Um, yeah, just slightly embarrassing, but it was really good. It
That's
was
so
really good.
cute.
Yeah, it was really good.
Yeah.
Um, and yeah. Um, Also I was advertising the Year of the Dragon
The
apparel
Kickstarter.
that I have on Kickstarter. It's right now it's in like late pledge mode, but um kind of like what Mia mentioned about not having the book in person. I didn't have samples.
Oh.
It was really
Mm.
tough to get people to pre-order them.
Mm.
So I kind of just gave up and just if somebody asked about it, I would mention it and be like, you get a free mini print if you pre-order here. A handful of people did, but it's all about like tactility and like being able to take it home unless it's
Yeah.
too big to carry.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Feel
Yeah.
like it's like half impulse buy when people buy at conventions.
Totally. And so
Yeah.
with the giveaway thing that you give for free, if it's like enticing enough, because I designed a book plate for my book for people who
Ooh,
pre-order and I was gonna
mhm.
sign them, but I realized I was like, oh, I know what this is. Even though if funnily enough, when I first heard what a book plate was, I was like, what is that? And I didn't think that's what most people would think there. But
Oh
Mhm.
no.
Devin was super
Mhm.
smart. She not only had her book there because their publisher sent her a copy, but she had stickers as a giveaway. It's like everyone knows what stickers are, and they were awesome ones too. So it's like, yeah, I think that communication in terms of what you're giving away needs to be really either really enticing or really obvious what it is. So
Mhm.
Yeah. I think
learn
that's a
very
good learning
quickly.
experience for sure to be able to have like something to hold and feel and touch or like something to take away from that.
Yeah.
Um, something and like I think stickers are a really good call because like they're inexpensive enough where like it's easy to give away. And like the incentive of
Mhm.
having somebody pledge to the Kickstarter is far good enough to have that as like a free piece of merch. And people love stickers too. Is what I'm realizing I really need to have more stickers at my
Yeah.
table. But yeah, but it's like all learning experiences too, because like now you can take that with you. And if you're like doing your next one, you're like, okay, so this is like a better way to advertise it, like have the physical product or have something that people can take away with them, even if it's not the thing
Mhm.
itself. Um, really good, easy incentive. Cause like, yeah, like from memory, I wouldn't quite know what a book plate is either, but
Yeah,
they were
exactly.
beautiful.
Mhm.
And people did sign up, which is awesome. I'm just saying it would have been so much easier if it's something they actually
Mhm.
knew what it was. So,
Oh
because the less
man.
things you have to explain, the better. Like you have your pitches, your
True.
items and stuff, but the less you have to talk and it just sells itself. It's
Mhm.
easier.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think the
Yeah.
thing about
And if it's
customers for
not,
sure is the fact that like the easier the lower the barrier to entry is to anything that like any concept that they can understand the better because people are seeing at tons of tables that day. It's like everything has to be a quick read. People do not read. This is
Mhm.
that
Oh,
I'm always astounded by this. I've been doing it for 13 years now. I'm still astounded by how much people do not read things that are right in front of their face. And they even say it. They're like, oh, this was right in front of my face. I asked you the question instead. I'm like, this happens, it's fine. But it's just like so like the quicker it's like social media almost in a way where like you really have to grab people's attention with like the minimum amount of lift that it's for the effort that it takes their eye to reach that thing and to understand what that is. It is really hard to do. It's like it takes so much time to learn how to get people's attention
yeah.
when everything else is creating noise around them in the show.
Mhm.
It's real difficult.
Sean, what were
Well,
you?
yeah, sorry,
Mhm.
Shawn. What were you going to say?
Oh, I was gonna say also make it if you're giving away a freebie, make it really simple to get the freebie.
Hmm.
I was like, you get a free mini print, but I have like 30 different mini prints. So it's like, okay, let me add this
Oh,
huge decision and narrow down from 30 options. So don't do that.
yeah.
Easier if you just have like one or two stickers,
Yeah,
like
right.
just simple options and um yeah.
Great advice. Yeah.
Yeah,
Mhm.
I think that's a really good point too, because like when you have tons of offerings, um, like one thing I like to do to make it easier, that is like if like when I'm selling stuff, that's really good for sales is to always have some kind of deal for like a bundle of things together so
Mhm.
that people are more willing to walk away with multiples of a thing. So the decision, for example, I have like I think 15 different trash animal designs and I'm like buy three, get one free. So it narrows it down. You have to choose like from like one out of 13 to four out of 13, which is way easier because then they start thinking about friends that they can give this thing to. They start thinking about like, oh, I think this person would like this, or I like this pair of things together. So it's like kind of like making it easier for them by putting things in categories and groups rather than just having a bunch of
Mhm.
stuff spread around willy-nilly really helps people kind of
Mhm.
zero in their focus into something. The moment I started doing series of things, I realized that my sales like immediately started increasing because people
Mhm.
understand groups and like collections of things.
Mhm.
It's a really, yeah, like I know Dustin is really good at that. Inkwell Illustration is really good at that. I think Key's really good at that. And Key also does giveaways. Key this year did banners, like not banners, like the little like the flags that you put on your badges.
Yeah.
Those,
Mm-hmm.
those. I'm doing
They
those
were
next
so cute.
show.
Hers are so cute. I got one for sure. It was amazing.
Mm-hmm.
With the fairy freak or the fungal freak, I think was the first
Yeah,
one, and then
yeah,
it was
yeah.
fairy freak
Mhm.
and something else freak at Dragon Con, which was really cool. Um,
What kind of stuff would be in the collection?
um, so I think Avant Garden is a good like a collection. Like basically, here's a set of
Mm.
queens that all are wearing different kinds of plants. Or the trash animal collection is like all like these like under a specific style, these different animals presented in the same way. So that like
Mm-hmm.
helps make a collection. It's kind of like a grouping of things that are meant to be displayed together.
Oh, okay. I
Yeah,
thought you meant
stickers.
like a print, a tote bag, and something else, like a pin or something.
Mm.
Oh yeah, I would consider that a set. Like things that like you can like actually buy together. I've
Mhm.
tried sets before, but they haven't worked as well as like collections of things that are meant to be displayed together. Because like right now I have like I think 8 of Dustin's prints on my wall from like his collector set. Because like when you see like these little things that are meant to be displayed together, it makes you want to group them. It looks fancy, it looks pretty, and it eliminates the thought process of like figuring out what prints have to go where. So you're like, oh, I get to put these in a
Mm-hmm.
square, and it's like neatly displayed and it looks beautiful. Um, Sets, I think, don't work unless you have them already grouped together. Like, for example, my friend Andrea sold bullet journal kits, and she put washi tape, she put the journal, she put stickers that you can put in the journal, like different things that all go together in one set. And it's like, this is all $50. That's really easy because you can just pick it up and leave with it. You don't have to choose like different ones or like whatever. You're just
Mm-hmm.
like, the set is there in front of your face and you can just walk away.
And it's all part of the same hobby, if that makes sense, as opposed to separate
Exactly.
things.
Mm-hmm.
That's really
Yeah.
smart. But
Like the
It's
also
true
like
really
a
smart.
stationary nerds.
yeah, yeah, totally. I was like, oh man, my face is lighting up hearing about that. I'm like, I want
Yeah,
that.
I mean, I love it. I want to. I was like, ooh, I get to start on my habit.
So
So yeah.
for the art collection, did the prints all have to be the same dimensions, or does the art have to be the same size?
Really important.
Mm-hmm.
Really important that the art is the same dimension.
Okay.
Like, I think that's to display it on their wall next to it. Because like when you're selling a collection of prints, you're selling it so that people can display it in groupings. It's the easiest way to display it in groupings. Again, eliminate all the guesswork, the same size print for everything that's in that collection. And present it in the same way if you can too. Like the Avant Garden series just has like a simple frame around each of the queens and like a lot of white space around it. So it's like usually like full bleed white border and like queen inside. So it's all the same format of presentation.
Got it.
It's easier for
Okay.
me too because I don't have to think too hard about how I'm going to compose this. I'm like, oh, I know what generally it's going to happen.
Right.
Queen in the middle, plants around it, lots of movement. It's cool.
Because I did have a triptych that I was gonna work on or am working on, but I hadn't thought about how to present it as prints or as a collection.
Mm,
Even though it is meant to be together, I
Yeah.
hadn't
yeah,
thought about them being the same
Mm-hmm.
size. So
yeah. Yeah, if it's
Yeah.
a triptych, it should be obvious that they are meant to be together. Like
mhm,
very obvious, like same colors, like same general color scheme or same general subject matter, etc. Whatever that means for you.
got it.
Yeah.
Mhm.
I mean,
Okay.
a real easy one is your Tristan Strong covers. Like that's a series,
Yeah.
that's a collection right there. And like if somebody wants to buy all 3 of them, like that's obviously like really easy. But yeah, if you're making it of your own work, I would think the theme, for instance, like if I did a group of mermaids instead of just the one, you know what I mean, that I have,
Yeah.
it would be easier to sell multiples because I have this aquatic theme in all of these instead of each piece is its own island, which is how it currently is.
Yeah, that's how I used to display my stuff too, is like each piece was its own island. And my print sales weren't nearly as successful because it was like so it's harder for people to kind of like get their mind around each different because they have to like reconfigure their mind as
Mhm.
they look at each print. And I didn't realize that for a long time. And I'm like, why aren't people buying my prints? And I'm like, oh, because it takes them a lot of effort to kind of like absorb each concept separately. Whereas like when you present a series of something, everybody's like, oh, like, okay, I wonder what her take of this kind of plant is going to be for this one, instead of like, what is this concept? What's going on here? Like it eliminates a lot of that guesswork.
Yeah, I think that's what
Mhm.
I was running into because I had my own personal stuff, my own personal IP and magic card prints and play mats all on the same table, which was kind of making people go, well, what is this for? Well, what is that about? Oh, hey, there's a magic card. Well, what is this?
Mhm.
So it was a
Mhm.
lot of me pitching and explaining.
Mm-hmm.
And,
Mhm.
if the pitch worked, then they were like, okay, well, I'll take all of these. And I go, oh, great. Or they
Awesome.
just said, oh, that's cute. And they would walk away. Like that's way too, you just gave me way too much information. I'm just going, oh hey, mermaids. Like,
Yeah.
oh man. But
Oh.
Yeah.
I get it now. Okay. This is
Mhm.
educational.
Yeah.
Yeah, and
And Shawn,
grouping
like,
things together. Oh, sorry.
yeah, no, to go. I was going to ask you
Oh,
anyway.
yeah, grouping things together strategically too, like having things in a series, but then also like if something goes really nicely together with something else, or if they have similar color schemes, even if they're not necessarily related yet, if you don't have a lot of series, like put things next to each other on your display where you could see somebody being like, oh, I would like to see those together in my house or
Mhm.
some
Yeah.
or my study or my game room or whatever. But yeah, yeah,
100%.
series are awesome. Because yeah, my sales also picked up a ton after I started doing that as well. Like the mushroom series where animals are taken over by fungus symbiotically. And then
Yeah.
also the ones where they're commingling with the flowers too, which is kind of the same concept. But yeah,
Yeah.
that really helps. And then having like, I mean, I do animals, so I do several of this type of animal or several of that type of animal or like things in a similar family or similar body shapes. And people like to group those together too.
Yeah. Makes a lot of sense to me. What I also realized too is that as I continued to just like sometimes I also had some new standalone prints at my table this year and I wasn't sure how they would sell, but I think now that I have more of a sense of the kind of art that I enjoy doing and like what I want to present in my table, it started like
Mm.
even the individuals started to sell a little bit better. Like I made the bee and hibiscus or hibiscus reference piece this year.
Mm.
And people it was crazy because it was the first time I was selling the print. That was the year that it was Gen Con had debuted. And I tried something new too where it was like a more self-serve setup. It didn't 100% work, but whatever. Where I pre-bagged and sleeved all the prints and boarded them, which I never do because it's so much work. But I
Hmm.
did it this year because I was like, I wanted to make it quick and easy for people to grab prints. And so I put them in a bin. And the moment I would put the bee and hibiscus print in the bin, like somebody would come by and like immediately buy it. And I'm like, oh, I'm like they like it, even though it's a standalone.
Yay.
But because my whole table is like plant themed, it fit in with the theme. And I'm like, oh, so like it's very easy to understand. It's like, oh, plant ladies, plant ladies.
Hmm.
And so that was really cool to see. It's like similar theming with everything. Really did help
Hmm.
like people understand my general whole vibe. Whereas I know like a lot of people, I don't think any of us here like at all, but like a lot of people struggle when they have like a bunch of different interests and different like kind of styles or different color schemes everywhere. And
Hmm.
they're like, people aren't really buying my prints. And I'm like, well, if it doesn't feel cohesive, it's very hard for people to get immersed into your world. And so
Hmm.
that's something that I learned over the years too, is like having similar color schemes, having similar points of views, like between the pieces, even if they're different, really did help the overall brand recognition that I had to present, which was really cool.
Hmm.
It does feel
Yeah,
like
there is.
selecting. Oh, sorry, real quick. I was just going to say that it
Oh
feels like
no, you go
selecting
ahead.
art to sell for a show is sort of like selecting art to include in your portfolio. It doesn't have to be every
Mm.
piece you've ever done, but which ones would get you
Hmm.
hired. And same with at a show. It's not every personal piece or even every personal piece you love. It's like which ones you think will be will connect with the audience at this show, and that might change from show to show. So I think it's interesting to think of it that way.
Yeah,
Yeah,
that
Hmm.
changes from state to state.
Yeah.
it does. It
Hmm.
really
So
does.
weird.
Yeah.
It's bizarre to see like different states and like what they resonate with because like Dragon Con was right after Gen Con, like a month after it. And I had pretty good sales there too. Because Dragon Con is always like my second best after Gen Con. Um, but still the vibe of the audience is like totally different and like what they're interested in is like very, very different. And it's just so interesting to see, like, just within like presenting the same thing, how people resonate with it. It's so fascinating. It's like a different state, different audience, different vibe completely.
Mm-hmm.
Because like the tabletop gaming audience, I think understands the value of art just in general because they spend a lot of money to buy board games and buy all the accessories that go with them. So they know how to spend money on things that they're passionate about. And the art is something else that they enjoy about games. And even though I have two board games that I'd worked on, but they weren't like I don't sell the prints really that I worked on that I made for those games. But even the fact that I am a tabletop artist, uh, that I think I don't know what it was about my art. I was so surprised that Gen Con even resonated with my work because I had no idea what to expect when I first did Gen Con in 2019. And but like I think people are already kind of primed to like know that they come here to spend money and to want to support the artists. And I think that's really cool of Gen Con as well. So I don't know, just interesting different vibes. I don't know what my point was when I went on that tangent. Um, but what else happened at Gen Con? Oh yeah, I debuted my coloring book at Gen Con. That was very cool and fun. It went really well. So I brought 50 coloring books just to experiment and see how they did. So that's how many I printed. And it was cool because people have been asking me for years, like, do you have a coloring book? Like, is this and so I'm like, oh, I got to make a whole coloring book. And then I realized that like, I was like, oh, I can just take all the line art that I have and just put it in I have so much line art, put it in a coloring book and sell it. And I purposefully labeled it volume 1 so that I could make more. And I think that Gen Con, I brought my coloring books. Out of the 50 that I brought, I was left with 14 when I exited Gen Con, which is very cool. So really good sales. People liked it a lot. And so like I think that was a cool thing that I realized because like, I think people are always like looking for books as well. People like to pick up a body of work and flip through them is what I've noticed. And I never had that before. So it was really rewarding. And I'm excited for you to experience this, Mia, when you finally have like all your physical copies in hand. When people pick up your book and like flip through it and like see everything that's inside, I'm like, oh, like they're like, because like also the moment that people physically touch your work is like, I think it increases the percentage widely of like the likelihood that they're going to buy it, just like in general. And so I printed like a soft touch cover and like, so it felt good when people picked it up and I had a sample copy so people could pick that up and I had copies behind it so people could just pick their copy and it's like, I want this, please. And I'm like, great, take your money, take the book, we're good to go. So it was really easy to also have them pick it up and like walk away, after like paying for it. Like I didn't have to like go rummage for it, which was really nice. But yeah, people really enjoyed it a lot. Some people sent me pictures of like their children or whatever already scribbling in it. It was just like, it was so cute. So I was really it was like a cool new merch type that I was able to experiment with for the first time, and that felt awesome. So Gen Con was good for that too. But yeah, not to contrast with Dragon Con because Dragon Con was also good, but Shawn, I'm curious about what your experience was like at Dragon Con. So
It
it's all
was
an hour and a half like
really
for Gen
good.
Con.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it was really good. I sold out of the rest of my snake sweaters there.
Oh yeah.
Um,
You
which
said you
was kind of
sold one off
hard
your
later.
back?
I sold
No.
two. I brought two for me to wear. And then people were so sad that I was like, well, I have these ones that I wear at conventions if you
Oh.
want it. They have cat hair on them. Um, but you could have it if you want it. Speaking of the cats, I think they're breaking in again. Um, so two people bought my sweaters, and then I had to go buy one of Leica's sweaters so I wouldn't freeze because it was
Oh my
cold in my
God.
area.
Oh my God, I thought you were joking. That's
Um,
amazing.
no,
Literally.
no, it was real. I still have some at home that I'm gonna save for myself because I'm not printing these ones again. Um, but it was really good. I didn't have any big ticket sales. Well, a couple originals. But it was
Hmm.
interesting. There was a lot of people who were interested in the food art that I do, like for my mini print series. It's all client work for a luxury food company. company in New York, but there were so many people who were buying stuff that like I had never heard of before, like ramps, and then like Iberico pig leg. Just people really interested in the food stuff, and then like
Interesting.
so I met a couple like myceliologists, like people who study mushrooms,
Oh,
where they like gave me lectures on mushroom anatomy on like my morel mushroom, and I was like, oh, this is the coolest thing ever. I'm meeting the people that I wish I was if I could do math. Um, because I wanted to be
mood
a
though, mood.
biologist, but I realized like, oh, physics and organic chemistry is something you have to do to be a scientist. I'm
Yeah,
out.
it's like
I can't do
incredible.
that. Yeah, I will die. But it was really cool. And one of them said something really nice. They were like, oh yeah, I mean that's like what Darwin and all the naturalists like were back then. Like they didn't have degrees. That wasn't a thing. They just documented and observed. And I was like, yes, I am a scientist. I'm a giant scientist. That's right. So that was a really cool moment. But
Amazing.
yeah, Dragon Con was really good. Sales wise, it was good. Um, yeah, the first few years I went, it was a lot slower because I had a weird spot the first year. Like a lot of people canceled, so they ripped out all the tables.
Oh,
So it's just like a half empty aisle. Um, Second
Christ.
year was better. This year it felt like a miniature Gen Con, what like volume wise, like there were always a lot of people around, and I definitely felt not having somebody with me. Like I had someone helping me at Gen Con, which was a lifesaver. And then Dragon Con, I didn't. Luckily, the people in the art show, they have a volunteer staff where they'll come and babysit your booth. They won't make sales, but like I don't have to worry about somebody snagging an original from the box when I'm going to the bathroom or something, which is
Yeah,
really nice.
Yeah.
that's really nice.
Um,
You were in the main
yeah,
art show or in the pop and comics section?
in the art show, yeah. I kind of want to try the Pop Artist Alley at some point because it feels like it's supposed to be a lot busier. And then again,
Yeah.
I heard things about the fire marshal keeping people out or something.
Yeah, I think it was kind of an issue this year as well on Saturday again, because
Oh,
Saturday gets so crazy
mm,
that the fire marshal doesn't like to let people in like massively to not overcrowd the building. But as a result, is a slow trickle in line. So that line takes like 3 hours to get into the building. So people don't like, even though there's a ton of volume of people in the line, the overall volume of people who are actually coming through is not as much as it would be. So
mm.
crazily enough, Saturday was actually my slowest day at Dragon Con.
Oh,
And I think if I can look at my let me just look at my sales really quick. I'm pretty sure Friday and Sunday were my best days at Dragon Con, and Monday was pretty good too. But it's like so
mm,
weird because like my numbers were just only a little bit down from last year at Dragon Con, which is not still not bad at all. But I was hoping that they would be improved after the whole debacle with Saturday last year being so awful. So yeah, I have my sales figures here. Yep. Yeah, actually, oh, Friday was my best day at Dragon Con.
mm.
Runner up being Sunday and Monday literally being on par with each other by $20 difference, which is crazy. Um,
Dang.
yeah, which it was, they were both really good days, but for some reason Saturday it was still a good day, but it wasn't a great day. Like I could feel how slow it was.
Hmm.
So that was
Yeah.
weird. I think that's the issue with Poppin' Comics is that the foot traffic can be affected by that whole line con situation where the fire marshal's just not
Hmm.
like blend. It's really, really frustrating.
That's
Um,
crazy.
But that doesn't
yeah,
affect the art show, or it does?
and does not affect the
Well,
art shows in a different building.
yeah,
Oh, that
that make
sucks.
cat.
I guess
So
it does by proxy because then people go to the art show instead because they
Oh,
don't
got
get
it.
in
yeah, I
to the
mean,
vendor hall.
Saturday's great for art show.
Yeah.
But like there's also like this thing where people come in and they're like, "Oh, I didn't know this was here." Like,
Yeah.
"Oh,
Yeah, because it's
that's
in the basement of the
great
Hyatt.
that you get to come to this secret art show." Um, but yeah, I mean, this year was better than the previous 2 years in terms of like people being around, I feel like. But Monday it was kind of a ghost town.
Wow.
I fully
Oh,
abandoned my table for quite a while on Monday,
wow.
just socializing. I mean, Friday, Saturday, Sunday, it was nuts, and I couldn't leave my table unless I really had to. But yeah, Monday was like, this feels like everybody was somewhere else, I guess, or that everybody had already left.
They were in the vendor hall. That's where they were because they get like
Yeah.
Monday, I think Sunday and Monday are the days that people can finally get into the vendors hall without having to wait a ton of time to get in. So that's when they use the opportunity to just like go up there and like explore all 4 floors of that place because the way it's laid out, if anybody hasn't gone to Dragon Con or doesn't know about Dragon Con, it is a convention in Atlanta that is set between 6 different hotels and a 4-story tall building. And so the hotels have like different events going on and panels and stuff. It is a crazy show. It's a huge party con. There's a rave that starts at 3 a.m. Yeah, like it's people go around with squirt guns full of vodka. It's Dragon Con is crazy. And so there are 3 different artist alleys at Dragon Con. There is the art show that Shawn is at, which is in the basement of the Hyatt. And that's also flanked by the anime district, which is a tiny, tiny little art show that's pretty new. It debuted last year. And it's like the anime artist specifically. I don't know when like how they decide whether or not to put people in the anime district versus Poppin' Comics is very similar, but it's just down there with them. And then there is the Poppin' Comics artist alley, which was where I was, and that was in the 4th floor of the America's Mart. The first 3 floors being which entirely vendor hall. So it's like that's where you get all your dealers, your leather stuff, your like I don't know mugs or whatever you can get from vendors hall, like everything. Glitter, I got makeup from down there. It was awesome. Surreal makeup is awesome. We're not sponsored, but like but it's a crazy time. And so like different conditions will affect the different halls based on like whatever is available to people. And because it's so difficult to get into the vendor hall because everybody wants to go there, I think they gravitate towards the art show instead, which is good because I want the traffic to go down there too. It's really hard to find it. If you don't know it's down there, you would never guess. Like it's just impossible because even when you go down to the basement, there's like 2 double doors. That's like one's the entrance and one's the exit. And I think the double doors are at least open during the show duration, but it's like down. You have to go through like there's people playing music in this hallway, and then there's these double doors, and then you can get into the art show. And once you're there, that place is awesome. It's really cool because there's like gallery walls, and then there's like people actually selling their art, and like in the gallery walls, people can display their beautiful artwork and then say what table they're at. And so on Sunday, was it Sunday that y'all had the award ceremony, or was it Saturday night? I think it was Sunday night.
I think it was Sunday night.
Yes, Sunday night there's an award ceremony. And like that's the only time I ever get to go down there because like it's open after hours and they have like food and stuff around and music playing. It's really nice.
Kind of like the Gen Con one, right?
Yeah, kind of like the Gen Con one.
That's awesome.
Yeah. So the vibes and the art show feel a lot more like Gen Con.
Yeah, though the award ceremony, it's all voter based. So there are some artists who like say vote for this piece in the art show awards. And I think with Gen Con, it's all juror based. Like
it's all jury based, yeah.
Yeah.
So voter based meaning the attendees vote or the artists vote?
Attendees, and then there's a category for the artists as well.
Interesting.
So I feel like I should be promoting like and it's all about a specific piece too. So like you have to be like, hey, vote for this piece. Here's the name and my name for this category or whatever. Like some people I think win every year because they're really great at promoting it. I always forget about it until the award ceremony. Yeah, it does kind of.
Oh man.
It's like also salesmanship. It's like the Oscars. Like if you have money, you're campaigning for an award.
Yeah, right. It's like they're on the campaign trail.
Yeah. And there's like even notes in the like, don't forget there's an award ceremony, but if you write your own ballots, we will throw them out. Like if it's the same handwriting or something. So apparently that's been a problem too.
Oh wow.
So I don't know.
Gosh, it's so interesting.
Well, back when I did Dragon Con, I would when I knew about the art show, I would put on my mayor hat and be like, don't forget, vote for me, like vote for Eric. I'd show the page and like just sign this title of the piece right there, and
Oh, that's amazing.
That's
it
really
worked.
funny. I love that. Yeah, I feel like Eric, you would do really well in the art show at Dragon Con for sure.
I did. I
When
did
Yeah,
Dragon Con 3 times.
come
Were
back.
you there this year?
I
No.
was
Wait,
not.
no. Oh,
when was the
I
last
did
time?
Dragon
so
Con in 2014, 2017, and 2018. That was
God, I
it.
could have met you any of those years because I was there all of those years
Yeah.
as an attendee.
Um, but yeah, it was great. But then after that, they changed. I liked the pegboard kind of displays, the gallery wall display setup that they
mm,
had originally, where we're in the center of the room and then have the tables and all that around the perimeter.
It
I
is
think
like
now
that.
it's
it's
everything's all in
like
its
that
own
this year.
bay,
No,
right?
it's still like that.
It
Hmm
is,
Mm-hmm.
hmm
It hasn't changed.
They
but
might have
it's less
switched it up
space
and
though.
then,
And switched it back. Yeah, like if it's weird because it feels like there's like more to see in the art show. Like I feel like it's bigger than it was before, which is impossible because it's the same room. But
hmm
all the pegboards are definitely in the center of the room, and then
hmm
all the tables are still like on the perimeters and like around and everything.
But
So
hmm
it's less space. You only have, like, from what I was told, only one little vertical wall. It's like 3 feet wide.
how much space is Josh
probably.
allotted?
Well, my canvases fit. So and they're 30, I don't know, they're big, like 24 by 36, I think. So they
Okay.
fit. I had one of those and then a fanged piece underneath. But I mean, it's not wide, but
Right. So
they
they're
also kind of want you to have just one piece to focus like
Mhm.
voting on or something, I
Yeah.
think.
It used to be
Mhm.
a full bay was three, like, 5 foot wide pegboard walls. So you had a whole
Oh,
bay.
Interesting.
Yeah,
Wow.
that's why, like, when they changed up the when they changed up the layout, I thought, oh, that sucks, because that's just less display space. Like, let's say you paint big and you wanted to bring a nice, like, uh eye candy piece or
Yeah.
something, a nice
mhm,
statement piece to the show. It's not going to fit on the current display wall. Whereas
mm,
before, like, the piece that I got a lot of awards for when I was there, it's a 4 foot it's a 4 foot painting. And that was a statement
um,
piece. So when you walked by my bay, you saw that.
Yeah.
mhm,
So I
mm.
don't know.
I think
That's
see some
Vertical
actual units of
pieces,
those
I
there.
guess.
What'd you say, Mia?
Oh no, I just said vertical pieces seem to be more ideal for the new layout.
Yeah,
Yeah,
Mhm,
yeah,
that is
small vertical
interesting.
pieces. Yep, definitely.
Yeah,
yeah.
but yeah, I didn't know, I didn't realize it was changed that, but it's probably because of the volume of people who are there now. Because like I feel like
Mhm,
there are more tables there than I remember there being when I was just an attendee.
Mm.
So I think that it's
mhm,
just expanded to allow more artists to come in, so the gallery space is more at a premium.
That makes
Um,
mhm,
sense.
Yeah, but the vibe there, I mean, everybody brought their A game, especially in the art show. Because in Pop and Comics, it's like a lot of comic artists, which is great and everything. In like the main section, and then you get into the booth area, which was where I was at. I had a corner booth. I was next to Gawky again, and then Andrew Thompson was like on the end cap on the other side. It was what I thought was a really good spot. I was like, oh, like people are going to see my stuff because my table's bold and bright. It's on the corner. It's in the aisle. Everybody can see it. But it did not garner as much traffic as I thought it would, as I hoped it would,
mm,
which was interesting. And I don't know why that was per se, because I like, I would like do the test where I would walk down the aisle and test the visibility of it. And I was like, well, this is mighty visible. Um, but I had a huge banner like behind my table as well. It's like, did they want to see more art? Like, I'm not sure. Like, I think I have to experiment with my setup. But
mm,
I mean, sales were still good regardless. But I just like I felt kind of like people would kind of bypass me to go to like the other aisles rather than go to the corner booth. And I was like, but I'm right here. I'm at the corner. This is so weird. So that was interesting. But yeah, the vibe in Pop and Comic is really different. Because obviously it's a lot more like commercial art, comic art, things that people like buy as gifts and stuff like that. Whereas art show, I think, is like much more like about originals, much more about the statement pieces. So it's just like a more artsy vibe overall, I think, which you go down there and the energy is completely different. And I like it made me really want to table in the art show, like really, really badly, really badly. So to answer your question, Shawn, I feel like your work is better suited for the art show just because it's like even if you try to apply for Pop and Comics, they might put you down there anyway because they're like your art show material, obviously.
All 3
like
years that I applied to Pop Alley also. First year I was like, how do I apply for this? This is really confusing. But yeah, they're always like, we're gonna forward this to the art show. I'm like, oh, but I heard that's where all the sales are.
Forward it again. Yeah. I feel
Yeah.
like my work sits right in between the two. Like I could make it more originals focused if I wanted to get into the art show, but now people are starting to know like who I am and like where I go because I only just started doing Dragon Con in 2022. So I'm fairly new to Dragon Con and people are like, "Oh, I saw you last year at the area." They're like, "Oh," and they remembered. They're like, "But you were over there, weren't you?" Because they moved me a row up and like over this year. So like people like are genuinely expecting you to like be in the same place and like looking for you in that same place. And if you're not there, they're like, "Oh, they moved you." And I was like, "You remember that? Like there's so many artists here."
Yeah.
So it's just like, oh, so like people are even because there are people who go year over year who have very distinctive booths. There's like some like woodworking person who has like this big sign that like lights up and everything, and he's always in the same spot every single year. So I think people do develop an expectation for Pop and Comics. It's like a familiar place to go to. So like now I'm like, I might not ever be able to leave. Because I'll have to start fresh if I go to the art show, honestly.
Yeah.
It'd be
They
really
do the
different.
same thing in the art show too. I was in a different spot every year because I was like, I want the booth or I want a different spot because this one's really bad. My first year. So people who remembered me from the first few years, they're like, you've been in a different spot every year. Aren't you supposed to stay in the same spot? Like, what are you doing? But yeah, hopefully I can stay put and people will remember to come to the same spot.
Yeah.
But most of the other artists, like I know where to find them because of last year. I don't even have to be like, okay, let me type their name into Instagram and find their booth number and whatnot.
That's interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah, but
I
no other
appreciate
show
that.
is like that.
I was gonna say,
I
'cause I
feel
don't think
like,
I think Gen Con
yeah,
shuffles it every year,
No,
right?
Gen Con always
hmm
shuffles.
Yeah.
yeah, and like you have to specially request that at any other show, and most shows will not accommodate that.
Right.
Yeah,
Um,
it's true. But yeah,
yeah, so
Dragon
I
Con
think
is
it's
one of
really
the very
cool that
few shows
Dragon
that's
Con does
consistent.
that.
Yeah,
hmm
which is kind of cool because like then you're like, oh, I have my spot. I know what to expect. I know what to do. I was so thankful I
hmm
didn't get my spot last year because like I had a big column, like a huge round column, and it was like really difficult to plan my table setup. But this time I had an actual
hmm
corner booth, and that was so much better. So
So
much.
much better.
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh man, one year at Indiana Comic Con was last year. There were 2 columns in my booth,
Oh
two
God,
of them
who
that were like
Ew.
this
Flanking you?
big. No, inside the booth.
Oh
what?
God.
So I would have had to set up my backdrop like 1 foot away from the table, which is not enough room
Jesus.
for a chair,
Oh
like
my
to sit down in
God.
a chair. Luckily, I got to
No.
move to a better spot, but
Oh, good. I'm
it
glad.
was wild. Like, how does that happen?
Yeah, it's like this should not be a viable spot. Like, don't
Uh,
put a table there.
It should just be
sounds
an
like they
empty space for the
oversold the
columns.
venue.
Yeah.
I
Probably.
think they did. I mean, that show is kind of notorious for not being great for vendors or artists. It's all about people
Mm,
come for the signatures of the famous people.
Yeah,
And it's like very small attendance compared to how many vendors there are. So
yeah.
unless
That
you like
happened
live
to
down the
me.
street, don't
Something
do it.
similar that happened to me
mm,
when I went to BlurredCon this year. Um,
Mm,
they oversold the venue. The spot where my table was supposed to be was full of like boxes, like just display boxes.
mm.
Nobody knew whose display boxes they were. There was just like piles and piles of boxes
Oh
where
my
my table was
gosh.
supposed to be. And then the guy running the art show had no idea where I was supposed to be, where my table was supposed to be, and was waiting for somebody else not to show up so he could give me his table.
Oh my
So
God.
then that person didn't show up by the designated hour. So I was given somebody else's table. And then maybe 10 minutes into setting up the booth, this dude who rolls up with suitcases ready to unpack, and I had his table. It was a
Oh
disaster.
Oh
no,
my
that's
gosh.
awful.
That's
And
a
there was only one
mess.
way in or out of the room I was in. So it was like
Oh,
a total like fire hazard.
Yeah.
It was like it was an absolute mess. But it was one of those kind of experiences where if you go online and rant about it on Facebook, they remove the posts.
Oh God.
oh
Oh.
no.
Yeah, it was one of those party conventions where it was like all about the cosplay
Yeah.
and
Mm.
and doing all kinds of stuff, but they didn't really treat the vendors right at all. So
Ooh,
there's
That's
great
so
experiences
sorry.
like Gen Con, like Dragon Con,
mm-hmm.
and then there's these
Mhm.
small operations where they're just like sell as many tables as you can. We
Yeah.
don't care
Mm-hmm.
where we put them on the roof.
It's like that Willy
But
Wonka experience, like that AI
Mhm.
thing. God.
It's like it's good ones and then it's some stinkers, like that's just that's how the con life
Mm-hmm.
can often
Mm-hmm.
be.
That's why
Um,
good staff is so important. Like they make such a difference, you know?
big difference.
Mm-hmm.
Makes a huge difference. Yeah. Is Gen Con's not the one that has like a green room for artists? Is that I know Lightbox Expo, which
That's
I'm
Dragon
go to.
Con.
Dragon Con, wait,
Dragon
does
Con
it?
has one. I
We don't
found
have
out
one for
about it
Puppet,
on the
huh?
last day,
Oh
but
no.
they had like snacks and stuff,
Oh, I want
which is
snacks.
really cool.
There was the
Yeah.
BIPOC lounge this year at Gen Con. That was really cool. I popped
Oh,
up.
they
What?
usually have that. They actually really wanted me to go this year, like last year and this year, and I felt really bad because after every show, like I would just be so exhausted. I'd be like wiped out, especially after the first day, and that's usually when they have their events in the BIPOC lounge. I'm like, I am not a person today. I cannot talk. I cannot even bear the thought of meeting strangers. Like it's not happening, and I feel so bad because I know I want to be there. Because I think Kwame was there. And yeah, I met Kwame for the first time. That was cool. That was
Yeah,
super cool.
dude, thanks to Eric. Yay.
Thanks
That
to
was like the
Eric.
highlight of
Thanks,
the show.
Eric.
It was
Now
so
Kwame's cool with us. Maybe we can get him on the show.
dude, we
I think
should.
we could. I totally think we could.
Yeah.
So yeah, well, I'll reach out to him.
That'd be so
Kwame
cool.
Mbalia, for anyone who's wondering, he's a New York Times bestselling author, and Eric's done the covers for his Tristan Strong books.
Christian Strong. Yeah, punches a hole in the sky. Yep, that whole series, written by Kwame, illustrated by Eric Wilkerson.
He was so funny. He was totally digging you, Eric, going like, "You didn't tell me about your podcast," because I told him about it. He's like, "What are you doing?"
Like
Right, Eric? What the heck?
there's like some
Oh, yeah.
stuff I don't even think to ask or think to say to. I don't know. I just figured I was never gonna see or hear from him after that last book was finished.
No.
Oh.
That's just how it is. Like I don't you
Mm,
don't you don't think you're gonna have a relationship with
It's true.
an author
Yeah.
after the
yeah.
fact, but that series changed both of our lives. So he told me when we were talking at my booth at my table at Gen Con that when he does school visits and stuff, he tells my half of the story and how it affected my life as well as his. So the kids get to hear like both sides of that, like the whole story. And I'm like, wow, man, that like I had to hug him. I was like, I can't believe that. That's so cool.
Really cool.
But you know, that's that that's the part of that con experience that
Yeah.
I'll always cherish. Like it's that's that doesn't matter how much money you make, it's the does
Yeah.
that experience is it going to be something so exciting, so happy that makes you so happy or makes you cry? Like it's like, oh my
Always
God.
tears at Gen
Um,
Con, always tears there. It's like there's always
yeah.
some
Mm-hmm.
heartfelt experience that happens at Gen Con. I'm like, I'm crying now. This is ridiculous. But
Mm-hmm.
yeah, like what a special show it is. Like even
Yeah.
if it's not profitable, it's like the people who I met have genuinely become lifelong friends. Like I found a whole community through Gen Con alone. Like I found like Mia and Shawn through Gen Con. Like that's when I first met y'all. And it was just like it's been incredible, like being able to like know y'all and be friends with you and like have Shawn stay at my house for Dragon Con. And like it's just like it's delightful. I don't know, it's like the artist community is a very special thing because we're such a small world and because we work so hard to do the things that we do and like and we all know what we've been through. And so it's so easy. It's the easiest thing in the world to just go up to the artist and just start talking to each other because we're like, yeah, like we get it. Like we know. And everybody is so kind, so helpful, so generous. Like Shawn, you let me borrow a pro panel extension. I would not have been able to put that pro panel up if it wasn't for you. I was about to be completely screwed. It was going to be real bad. Then and I was like, you know what? I was like, I have a feeling Shawn might have an extra. And like you were like, oh yeah, have fun. Here it is. And I was like, thank you for my life. I really appreciate it. Because my stuff would have been looking jank without that thing.
Same with our neighbor. Like Eric and I had our neighbor behind us, Michael. He was amazing too, and he bought pro panel extensions, and we would have been screwed too. It would have looked so bad if he hadn't done that. And yeah, just
Yeah,
amazing
he reached
people.
out way ahead of time and like explained to us that we were like asked if we were bringing them, and I'm like, I don't even know what a pro panel extender is.
I was like, I don't own them, so I have no reason to buy an extender. And he just bought them both. And I'm like, wow, like it was, and
Yeah.
yeah, and he was
So
such a cool
cool.
guy too, just meeting him for the first time. So yeah, I just love that we see people we know, we see people we've only met online, and then just meet new people, and everyone just, I think you're right, Lauren. It's like everybody works so hard, and it's like that, it's that shared sort of effort, and
Yeah.
bonding through trauma, I guess, on some level, but it's
Exactly.
not traumatic, but it's a grind. It really is. And so you just come away just like, I don't know, closer to these people that you've just met, with
Yeah.
experiences like that. So
Well, I mean, like speaking of that, like I wanted to say to Shawn, like I really appreciate you helping me out because Shawn gave me her Square reader,
Oh
the little
Yeah.
because I bought what do they call it?
A
The
terminal.
I
the
don't know what the big
terminal,
terminal,
right?
yeah.
terminal, the Square
Hmm.
terminal. So I bought one of those before the convention, but I didn't open the box until I
Oh
got to
no.
my hotel room, and it turned out that it was a return. So somebody took a new one and put their old one in back in the box and
Oh
then sent it
no.
back to Amazon, but they did it very carefully. So I had a used one. It had a
Oh,
screen protector on it. Like it already had a screen protector on it. And I'm thinking, oh, that's really cool that they come with screen protectors. But then I'm like, wait, no, no. Oh, this is a used piece of garbage. So Shawn
no.
gave me hers and I wouldn't have made it through the day
Yeah.
without that. So I thank you so much for that.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I wasn't using it. I switched to the PayPal Zettel for Gen Con
You're
because
telling me
it
about that.
generates its own Wi-Fi, so you don't have to worry about blockers. Like there, Fan Expo Denver, I had to pay $80 for internet each day. Um, well, no, luckily, actually, two of the days carried over, but they wanted you to do $80 a day. And they blocked the Wi-Fi, so I was like out of luck. I had to shell out for that. So I bought one for Gen Con, so I wasn't using my Square terminal. So it got some use with you.
So sweet.
That's
Yeah.
awesome.
Yeah.
I mean, I think the power of the community is like reflected really well. My friend, my table assistant at Gen Con, Allie, who was just she held it down. She was wonderful. If you like everybody, if you are neurodivergent, like me, like my ADHD behind, bring a table assistant who knows how to organize because boy howdy, it's so helpful. So helpful. She held it down. She used to be like a production manager. So like yes,
Mm.
very, very good. Different kind of thinking than it's great. But she'd been going through a tough time because like just the industry and the state that it is in right now. And she was saying that like even though she wasn't, the artist selling her stuff, she was saying that Gen Con really reaffirmed her faith in the art industry because of the way that the community of artists was at Gen Con, how we supported each other and how we just like uplifted everybody and how we actively wanted everybody to do well. And we would get really sad if people didn't do well and we would celebrate the wins. Like it's not a competition between us. It's like literally everybody wants each other to succeed. Everybody wants to see people make money. It's like, because like it's a win for all of us when we see artists like be able to win. And she was like really moved by that. And it's like that's the power of the community. It's something that's really, really special. And that's why I love doing Artist Alley. For how exhausting it is, through how much money you have to spend up front to make all your merch and get all your travel stuff. It's always ultimately worth it, even if it's not like a great convention, because like of the artists and the people who are there. It is a fantastic, it's a fantastic show. Yeah.
Every show I go to, it always fills me up. Like even though I'm like dead tired at the end, I'm like this like
Heartful.
fills up my heart and it like renews my spirit. Like yeah, just seeing all of the artist friends and new artist friends that we meet at
Yes.
each show, just seeing, yeah, I don't know, because yeah, like we all get what we're going through. We've had the same experiences, we've had the same struggles, and I feel like also with artist alleys, like we're all nerds and we're all like
Yes.
socially awkward.
Yes.
We're just weird and we all get to be like struggly weird artists together and like nerd about our favorite things together, and I love it so much. It's my favorite thing.
Yeah, we're a community of such weird little guys. It's fantastic. It's
Yeah,
like, oh, like we
But
gremlin over to each
little
other's
guy.
tables and like
so, you know,
yeah.
what's I don't know if I would call this sad or what, but it's something I've it's a takeaway from every convention I go to, based just piggybacking off of what you said, Shawn, because every time I go to a convention, I'm around kindred.
Hmm.
You know, these are my people. I'm
Mhm.
so
Hmm.
excited to see them. I can talk. There's a shorthand of the conversations.
Hmm.
I went to a dinner after like the third night. I went to a dinner with Christina Carroll and a bunch of
Oh,
other artists, and we sat there talking about movies loudly, laughing about like the little small details of movie. I can't have conversations like that with just my neighbors or people around me in my life. They would
Hmm.
be like,
Hmm.
"What are you talking about?"
yeah.
What? Like it was a full on in-depth, analytical conversation about like movies we loved, like really getting deep into Star Trek or Star Wars lore. Like I gotta travel out to the middle of the country to have that kind of conversation, and that's worth it to me.
Yeah.
So, you know,
100%. All right. That's it. We've been recording for like 2 hours. Oh
Oh
my
man.
God. All right. Well, thank you everybody for listening. The takeaway is conventions, the beautiful art community, the experiences that we have, the
Mhm.
learnings that we take from it. I hope y'all learned something, listen to us all talk about our experiences as well. I hope that it encourages you if you're having a hard time doing conventions or if you're interested in starting or if you've been doing them for a while. I hope that you got something from our experiences from Gen Con and Dragon Con. As always, thank you so much for listening. If you like what we do and want to support our show, please feel free to smash that like button, hit that subscribe, leave a comment. If you participated in live chat, thank you so much for having conversation with us. It really means a lot to see people come out all the time. And oh yeah, also shout out to longtime fan Dianita, who I got to meet at Dragon Con and finally have a conversation with for the first time. You are the sweetest person ever. So shout out to you. Thank you for supporting the show. But it's just a really wonderful community, and I'm really grateful that we could to continue to do this and to talk about these experiences with y'all. Thank you so much. We'll see you next time. Now that the con season is almost over, it should be less busy for all of us too. So we'll be recording more regularly again, which I'm looking forward to because I felt really bad, but we all needed the break. Self-care is important too. So looking forward to seeing y'all for the next one. Have a really good time. Bye, everybody.
Bye.
Do the thing, Eric. Do the thing. There it is.
I did it wrong.
Yeah.